resolutions introduced by the government. Please could I ask members to nominate a chair for the duration of the meeting?
Nominate Councillor Shuttleworth.
Is that second? Councillor Hussain?
That's fine by me.
Councillor Hussain, you're on mute.
Can we proceed, Katie?
Councillor Hussain's with us, he's just on mute. So.
Councillor Hussain?
We're not going to have a quorum if you can't get through, if I think right.
No, we need him to be in attendance.
Yeah. Can you not participate via chat? Would that be allowed?
I'll send the chat and see if he replies.
Katie, somebody did say fine by me. I'm not sure who it was. Presume Councillor Hussain.
No, it was Mr. Hopkins who.
All right.
Excuse me.
Yes, he's here. Can you turn mute off, please?
Morning, everybody. Sorry, I couldn't find the mute at this time of morning.
Okay, thank you. So
Morning.
are you okay to second the election of chair?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Over to you, Councillor Shuttleworth.
Thanks, Katie. I'm Councillor Graham Shuttleworth and I'll be chairing the meeting. The regulations have temporarily been removed. The regulations temporarily removed the legal requirement for local authorities to hold meetings in person. This will enable councils to make effective and transparent decisions on the delivery of services for residents. The requirement for public meetings to be made accessible to the public remains, and the link to the virtual meeting is available on the council's website in the usual live meeting link page. If a connection to a member is lost during this meeting, I will stop the meeting to enable the connection to be restored. If the connection cannot be restored within a reasonable time, the meeting will proceed, but the members who was disconnected will not be able to vote on the matter under discussion, as they would not have heard all the facts. Should any aspect of the external link fail, I may call a short adjournment of up to 5 minutes or so to determine whether the connection can quickly be re-established, either by video technology or telephone in the alternative. If the connection is not restored within that time, the meeting will be adjourned and any further business will not proceed until another time and date. Any public questions properly submitted to the meeting during this period will be read out by myself and answered at the meeting. Can I ask at this stage that unless you're going to speak, may I ask you to turn your microphones off, please? Right, firstly, can I ask the clerk to ask the members to confirm their attendance?
Councillor Gary,
Present.
Councillor Hussain,
Present.
and Councillor Shuttleworth.
Present.
Thank you.
We also have officers in attendance from licensing, legal and constitutional services. When the panel comes to take a vote on a report, each member will be individually asked to state whether they are for, against or abstaining. As with ordinary licensed panel meetings, once the exclusion of the press and public has been moved at the meeting to enable the panel to discuss private reports, the press and public will no longer be able to view the meeting. If we can now turn to the agenda, and for the benefit of those members of the public watching, the full agenda pack is available on the Council's website. Item 2, do we have any apologies for absence?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Item 3, do we have any urgent business?
Not been notified of any, Chair.
Thank you. Item 4, do members wish to make any declarations of interest? None. Thank you. Item 5, have we received any public questions?
No public questions have been received.
Thank you. Item 6, can members note the orders of proceedings? Item 7, the following report is for an application for a premises licence in respect of the Stables Wedding Venue, Delft. May I ask Nicola Lord, the Principal Licensing Officer, to present the report, and as I just asked, may I ask all microphones are turned off during Nicola's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, everyone. So the report I've got here is to present the application for the Stables Wedding Venue at Slatfield Farm in Delft, and it's been put before the panel today due to representations being received. The schedule of this hearing has actually been delayed somewhat due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The application was actually received on the 5th of December 2019. The applicant, Mr. Mark Stephen Hopkins, applied for a new premises licence in respect to the premises I mentioned before, and the last date for representation against the application was the 2nd of January 2020. The details of the licensable activities and the times applied for are as follows. I've got live music, recorded music, performances of dance, and the supply of alcohol indoors and on the premises only, and that's Monday to Sunday between 1 p.m. and midnight. And the hours the premises are proposed to be open to the public is between Monday and Sunday between 1 p.m. and past midnight. A full copy of the application is attached at Appendix 1, and location maps are attached at Appendix 2. The representations we've received were following submission and advertisement of the application. We had several representations that were submitted, both from responsible authorities and interested parties, and these can be found at Appendix 3 to the report. A mediation meeting was arranged between the applicant and the Environmental Health Service alongside other interested parties who submitted objections against the application, and the mediation meeting resulted in the following conditions which were agreed. Signage regarding parking to be put in place on days of events and 3 marshals in place. No transfer of licence, and no guests coming in on Knott Hill Lane. In addition to the conditions, it was agreed that an independent noise report will be undertaken before a decision was made on environmental health withdrawing their representation. The noise impact assessment was completed, and a report came in dated the 8th of March 2020. It was accepted by environmental health with the addition of the following conditions being agreed. The representation was withdrawn. All external doors and windows shall be kept closed when entertainment is being provided, other than for access and egress and in the event of an emergency. If additional ventilation is subsequently necessary, then it shall be attenuated in accordance with the scheme submitted to the licensing authority. The licence holder or his representative shall conduct regular assessments of the noise coming from the premises on every occasion the premises are used for regulated entertainment, and shall take steps to reduce the level of noise where it is likely to cause disturbance to local residents. A written record of these checks made in a logbook kept for that purpose and will include the time and date of the checks, the person making them and the results, including any remedial action. Prominent notices placed on all exits from the premises requiring customers to leave the premises and the area quietly. It should also be noted that following consultation with Greater Manchester Police and Licensing Authority, the application was amended to incorporate conditions and replace what was provided in the original operating schedule. These conditions are quite lengthy and can be found from page 8 onwards in the report, and they relate to all aspects from the licensing objectives. Members are asked to consider the licensing policy when reviewing the application, and in particular you'll have to excuse my typo. It mentions public safety, but it's actually public nuisance, and that states when addressing public nuisance the applicant should initially identify any particular issues having regard to their particular type of premises and or activities which are likely to adversely affect the promotion of the public nuisance objective. Such steps as are required to deal with these identified issues should be included within the applicant's operating schedule. A full copy of the Council's licensing policy is available, and also the Secretary of State guidance in relation to public nuisance provides that where applications have given rise to representations, any appropriate conditions should normally focus on the most sensitive periods. For example, the more sensitive period for people being disturbed by unreasonably loud music is at night and into the early morning, when residents in adjacent properties may be attempting to go to sleep or are sleeping. This is why there is still a need for a licence for performances of live music between 11 p.m. and 8 a.m. In certain circumstances, conditions relating to noise emanating from the premises may also be appropriate to address any disturbance anticipated as customers enter and leave. The options when determining the outcome of the application are to grant the application as applied for with or without amendments agreed with Greater Manchester Police, grant the application but modify the operating schedule in relation to hours, days, conditions or activities, or to reject the application. Any steps appropriate to promote the licensing objectives should be specified. If no steps are appropriate, the application should be granted. Findings on any issues of fact should be on the balance of probability. And in arriving at a decision, members must have regard to the relevant provisions of national guidance in the licensing policy statement, and reasons must be given for any departure. This decision should be based on the individual merits of the application. The application, consultation in accordance with the Act has taken place with all responsible bodies, and notice has been given to allow for any representation from other persons. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicola. Any questions from either Councillor Gary or Councillor Singh? Councillor Gary?
Hiya, Nicola. In a venue, like a hotel, there's a limit on the number of guests who can, attend. Is this how many guests would be? What's the maximum amount of guests in the marquee?
That's not something that would be dealt with through licensing. If there's a maximum capacity for a premise, it's usually through the fire service to determine that under fire regulations. It's not something covered under the Licensing Act.
Because one of the objectors is saying that there's up to 250 people. It just seems quite a lot, that. And the other thing is another condition was that the windows had to be shut when the live music's on. But how can you do that in a marquee? Because the walls are quite thin anyway.
Yeah, I think that was a bit of an oversight when the condition was put forth by Environmental Health. Obviously, I've not actually had sight of the marquee itself, but I presume there might be sidings on it, and that's what they might be referring to, whether they're open or closed.
If I can assist with that question.
No, sorry, Mr. Dale.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know if you wanted me to assist. No, that's fine.
This is members' questions only. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, Councillor Gary?
Do you know how much parking space is allocated?
I wouldn't. I don't know that, unfortunately. I'd have to refer the question to the applicant and his representative to answer that question.
Okay, thanks.
And Councillor Hussain?
That was actually a question from me about the parking spaces, and also like Councillor Gary says, it's the windows, shutting up the windows. I mean, how can they control that if this is such a big venue? 250 people is a lot of people, and if you close in at 11 o'clock, and once they all start leaving at 11 o'clock, it's not going to be that they'll all be out by 11:05. So, you know, it is a bit of a concern. So I just want Mr. Hopkins to clarify that, please, or if, you know, thank you.
You know, this is just questions to the officer, not the applicant at this stage.
My apology.
Okay. Nicola, on the first pack on page 37, we had the report from Amanda Leonard.
Yes.
And she says there, the applicant has not fully considered public nuisance in their operating schedule. Does that still apply?
Sorry, I'm just trying to find the report at the moment, Councillor. So page 37 of the...
Page 37 of the big letters, the big numbers at the bottom of the original
right.
pack, first pack.
No problem, I'll just come to that now. Yes, that was the original representation submitted by Environmental Health pre-mediation and pre the noise impact assessment.
Right, and she says, I'm concerned about the application to play music, both recorded and live outdoors until midnight. What's changed? What's changed there?
The mediation meeting, the additional conditions that were agreed between Environmental Health and the applicant, and also the noise impact assessment that was produced, ultimately led to Environmental Health withdrawing that objection.
Right, so the environmental report you got for the sound, the noise pack on from, is it NSL, was it? I take it that's been accepted, and NCSL, that's been accepted and everybody's happy with it?
As far as Environmental Health were concerned, yes. Obviously,
Right.
There were still some issues as far as the interested parties, the local residents were concerned, which is why it's proceeded to the hearing today. But as far as Environmental Health were concerned, they were happy to withdraw their objection based on that report and the additional conditions.
Right, and again, on the same page 37, item number 1, the number of events, that's been withdrawn as well, is it?
I think sorry, you'll have to excuse me, Councillor. I came in late to the application, but as far as I'm aware, that still stands. I think that was it doesn't. Sorry, no, it doesn't. So yeah, that has been withdrawn as well.
Right, and
apologies.
Environmental Health, are they recommending any maximum number of events?
Not that I'm aware. It was only the conditions that they agreed in relation to signage for parking, that there should be no transfer of licence, and no guests coming in on Knott Hill Lane.
Okay, thank you. Any member had any other questions before we move on? No? Okay. Right, may I ask the applicant, Mr. Hopkins, and his solicitor, Mr. Tony Dales, to address the panel, please?
I'll set the timer for 20 minutes.
Thanks, Katie.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. My name's Tony Dales, a licensing consultant, and I'm here today representing Mr. Mark Hopkins, the applicant for the Stables wedding venue. Mr. Hopkins, as you know, is present, and he would like to address the committee and to answer any questions you may have. Several questions that have just been raised by yourselves will be addressed directly by Mr. Hopkins when it's his chance to speak. As you're aware, the premises licence application for the above was submitted in December 2019 with supported documentation and is included in your bundle. And to assist you, we have produced, and it's at Appendix 5 of Mr. Hopkins, is the site map, which is quite a useful referral point. That's at Appendix 5. for your reference. This application is a strong application. It does address all elements of the 4 licensing objectives, and as Mr. Hopkins licensing and training consultant, I will personally provide an update on how we address and comply with all the 4 licensing objectives, including initial and ongoing training to be delivered to all staff. At the time of the application, the venue has obtained planning permission for the venue to operate as a wedding venue. In addition, Mr. Hopkins has applied to Oldham Council for a wedding licence in order to provide has been granted. The application, as you can see, is to provide a high quality, well thought out wedding venue. And to answer one of your questions, this is to cover just 12 events in a calendar year. That was discussed at the earlier meeting, and it was agreed that subject to environmental health receiving a favourable report, we would in fact only be covering 12 events in the calendar year. The premises licence and wedding licence applications, including explanatory letters sent by Mr. Hopkins to residents, did attract representations from the Environmental Department and 4 local residents. One of the residents, Mrs. Calo, is here today. And the basis of the Environmental Department representations did relate to possible noise pollution and nuisance. Without making any representations, both the Police and Licensing Department asked that for conditions to be included on the licence if granted. These do appear under the general heading on page 8 and 9 of your papers, and Mr. Hopkins has agreed to all of these conditions to be included in the premises licence if granted. Despite our initial response to the representations that we were aware of, it was decided by the Council Licensing Department to hold a pre-hearing meeting with a view to discuss the applications and establish the need for any hearing. This meeting was in January 2020 and was attended by Mr. Hopkins and myself. A comprehensive pack was put together by Mr. Hopkins and circulated to the residents making representations and to the council representatives. That pack is included in Appendix 1 to 5 in your papers. The meeting was chaired by the Licensing Department and was attended by our Environmental Services and 4 local residents, Mr. and Mrs. Calo and Mr. and Mrs. Stott. As I say, Mrs. Calo is here today. At this meeting, Mr. Hopkins provided information, he answered questions and provided reassurances relating to this operating schedule, particularly in relation to noise issues and covering all of the 4 licensing objectives. The document issued in the meeting, as I say, are contained in your appendices 1 to 5, which includes the site map that I will be referring to. This meeting was very positive and was well received by those attending. A record of the meeting appears on page 7 of the Council's report. As a result of that meeting, further conditions were agreed and were documented. They have been explained by Ms. Lord already and are on page 7. These conditions once again are agreed by my client and will be included as a premises licence condition if it is granted. At that time, we were also requested by the Environmental Services for Mr. Hopkins to obtain a noise impact assessment report for the venue. This assessment was commissioned to and conducted by Noise Control Solutions, and a report dated the 8th of March 2020 was submitted. Just to give you some background to the individual who conducted this report, it was by Mr. Andrew Todd, a corporate member of the Institute of Acoustics, a holder of MSc in acoustics, and with 12 years experience as an acoustic engineer. The report appears in your bundle, and this report is very comprehensive and contains significant technical details. What I will try and do now is to summarise that for you and to concentrate on perhaps the key points. What the assessment did was simulated noise tests on several days. The test covered the intended site, which is referred to in the report as S1 in the bundle, and the nearest residential property, which is the Old Stables Cottage on Nothill Lane, Delft. That's referred to as NSR, a property some 80 metres away from the venue. You have aerial photographs in figure 1 and 2 on page 9 of your report, which shows their proximity. On the A3 plan at Appendix 5, the Old Stables Cottage is not shown, but for your information, if it was shown on there, would be on Nothill Lane to the left of the area marked Pond, which is at the top of the map itself. That gives you a bit of a visual of where this is located. It is to be noted that the resident at these premises of the Old Stables Cottages has no objections to this application. And as I say, he is the closest residential property. I now refer to the NCL report, page 8, final paragraph, which states that further dwellings are located on Stonewood Road, Delft. However, these premises were not considered to be subject to the same level risk of noise as NSR1. And that's because of due to the additional distance from the site and the topography providing a completely blocked line of sight to the actual venue. Whilst this is the case, it is important, however, that all residents' concerns are considered in this matter, and we fully understand that. I now refer to the recommendations on page 19 and 20, which outline a range of measures to be implemented at the venue. These are recommendations from the expert. These measures will be adopted by Mr. Hopkins, and he will provide you in a short while with further information on how that's going to take place, and hopefully answer the questions that you've asked already. The summary and conditions, which are quite important, on page 21 of the report, and the final paragraph states, based upon calculations documented in section 9 of the report, it is believed that the music noise level from the venue can meet the proposed limits at the Stables Cottage, the nearest location, with significant sufficient control strategy is in place. And once again, we'll refer to that shortly. I do also refer to a document that's been given to you in your bundle. This is a document commissioned by Mr. Hopkins and produced by Direct Acoustic Solutions Limited of West Sussex. That's dated the 14th of January 2020. Is mitigation measures. The document is specific to the Stables wedding venue and provides a bespoke range of measures that can be put in place to mitigate noise pollution. This again shows the measures that Mr. Hopkins took to ensure the issue of noise nuisance was not underestimated, and answers the question regarding, has Mr. Hopkins taken the issues of noise pollution seriously in this matter? And the answer is yes. Mr. Hopkins once again will elaborate on that. As a direct result of the NCSL report and its submission to the council, the environmental services withdrew their representation, but requested conditions be attached to the licence if granted. These conditions, as mentioned, are quite lengthy. They appear on page 8 of your papers, and once again agreed by my client. They are, if the licence is issued today, is an agreement for those to be on the licence. It is my intention to allow Mr. Hopkins to address the committee and others present with the measures he will put in place to ensure the NCSL conclusions are addressed. In preparation, Mr. Hopkins has submitted a report to the hearing in your bundle dated the 30th of January, which you have in your possession there. I have to say it is the first time for me that although the application was submitted in December 2019, COVID-19 has put everything on hold and the year has passed very quickly. However, we are here today with residents, one of which is present, still concerned regarding this application. Their representations are documented in the bundle pages 39, 41, 43 and 45. We will do everything today to try and answer everyone's concerns, both residents and the committee, and to allow this application to be accepted with the recommended conditions attached. Just before I hand over to Mr. Hopkins, I would like you to refer to the document within your bundle, which is the due diligence folder to be used at the venue. This folder contains aid memoirs, policies, procedures, monitoring forms and training records, which will be used by Mr. Hopkins as DPS and all staff at the venue, and who will receive comprehensive training delivered by myself prior to the venue opening. This document is contained in a red folder, and it is designed to answer all issues relating to the 4 licensing objectives. That folder will be on site at the venue whenever any events are taking place and will be available for inspection at any time. In addition, that folder will contain a noise record booklet, a bespoke booklet that Mr. Hopkins will have responsibility for recording all noise issues and the monitoring of noise whilst events take place. I'm now in a position to answer any questions you may have from myself, but you may wish to allow Mr. Hopkins to speak to you first and then to ask questions altogether. I'm fine with whichever way you wish to go on that matter. So that's my opening address. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dales. Katie, what time is left?
7.5 minutes.
Right, Mr. Hopkins, do you wish to address the panel?
Yes, please, Mr. Shuttleworth. Thank you.
Okay, well, as you've heard, you have 7.5 minutes left. Okay.
Splendid. Yeah. Okay, I'll make it succinct. Yes, good morning, all. Yes, as you say, my name is Mark Hopkins. I'm here representing the Stables Wedding Farm. At the outset, I'd like people to understand ultimately, we respect our neighbours. I've been a resident of Delft since 1984. I'm chair of governors at the village primary school, so hopefully I'm committed to Delft, and this ultimately is our home. So we respect other people's homes and ultimately our home. To answer some of the questions that appear to have been raised, hopefully the bulk of them are covered in the contract. We've appended the actual wedding contract to the bundle of documents, which stipulates there's a maximum of 200 guests capacity, no more. There's a limited parking of 16 places within the contract, with a provision for overspill parking into Delft with a park and ride situation. So maximum allowed cars on site would be 16. And we're looking to utilise external parking within Delft as overspill. In terms of monitoring and policing the noise abatement, the proposal was to set up monitoring stations for the first at least 3 events at recommended points to be discussed, to take physical noise readings and feedback live data from those noise readings. So we actually have live data. There's no speculation in terms of what's being emanating from the event. And as we say, it's 12 events a year maximum, no more than that. And I think basically, yeah, the contract does cover most of these points. As I say, each individual who signs a contract for the Stables Wedding Farm is made aware of being courteous to local residents. Oh, and finally, yes, sorry, yeah, in terms of monitoring the event itself, there's the proposal on the Appendix 5 of the plan. The proposal is to employ 3 security stroke parking personnel throughout the event, 1 to be based within the car park to ensure cars arrive and leave safely, 1 to be based partway up the access footpath to ensure guests stay within the parameters of the location, and then finally 1 at the venue itself. This process is monitored by these parking regulators, security. So they will be off the full duration of the event each time, and that's stipulated within the contract. And yes, I think that's all I could actually say, to be quite frank.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hopkins. Right, questions now from members. Councillor Hussain, do you have any questions to Mr. Hopkins or Mr. Dales?
Yes, the only thing that's so concerning is the parking for 16 for 200 guests. You know, it's very little, and if you're going to start, if the guests are going to start parking elsewhere in Delft, the only concern, Mr. Shuttleworth, is, for instance, if you go out for a night and you want a bit of a drink and you leave your car there, what happens then? And how are you going to enforce people not coming down Notting Lane, and how are you going to enforce close the windows when the music is playing?
Yeah,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Dales, please do.
Sorry, myself. Yes, in terms of, as I say, Councillor was saying, that the parking, the overspill parking was intended to be either at Delft Cricket Club or Delft Primary School, with making a donation to the cricket club or the primary school, and then park and ride people in so it's controlled. And in terms of the noise abatement, as well as we referred to, there's a direct acoustics report which is quite comprehensive in terms of measures to implement from noise emanating within marquees. The idea will be to trial elements of those, not all in one go, just in the event we granted the licence, to trial elements of those to understand the best measures to implement during an event, really. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Anything else, Councillor Hussain?
No, and how are you going to enforce people not to come down Notting Lane?
Well, the map and the contract stipulate where the parking is. The postcode for the parking zone is OL3 5DZ. The only one person which is proposed to come via Notting Lane is the bride and groom via their vehicle. Everybody else is shuttled towards a car parking space with the postcode OL3 5DZ. In fact, for that matter, we may be in, I'm just thinking now on my feet, but maybe in an idea to put a parking marshal at the bottom of Notting Lane as well. That's just thought about that process now, maybe. It would probably be pursuant to about maybe 8:30, 9 o'clock. That may be a suggestion we want to consider to ensure people don't go Notting Lane.
Right, okay, thank you.
Councillor Gary?
Yeah, one resident's raised a concern about glamping pods. You got plans for those?
So yeah, we've got permitted rights for 3 glamping pods which are on site, yeah, which are built already. So that supplements it was in conjunction with the wedding application. So we've got permission for those.
Okay. Another concern was fireworks near the animals.
Again, if you refer to the contract, Councillor Gary, there's no fireworks allowed whatsoever. Excuse me.
And the other concern was during silage time, large machinery is used on the narrow lanes, often working against the clock. Do you think this could be a problem during that period when guests are arriving?
Sorry, Councillor Gary, I missed that. I do apologise.
It's about apparently there's a silage period with heavy machinery working round the clock. I don't know what the silage period is, but would the heavy vehicles cause a problem for guests?
No, I don't know. I don't probably understand the silage period. In terms of monitoring, as I say, the access will be via Stoneswood Road to Thurston Clough, and then there's from the car park, there's dedicated access to the event space from there, as you probably can see on the map. Yeah. It doesn't really, it's set, we have 10 acres of grounds, so that the access path is within our grounds and it's not a public footpath, or we do have a public footpath on the other side, but that's not going to be impeded at all. So this is a track leading to the event space from the car park dedicated to that.
Right. And I think another concern was with it being a working farm and children. Have you got enough in place to keep the children safe from chemicals or machinery?
Right. Yeah, we're not actually a working farm. We're more of a petting zoo, Councillor Gary. So we have various pigs and sheep and goats and things. So we're more of a petting zoo. There's no chemicals as such on site. And as I say, hopefully the parking marshals, stroke security people on site would marshal people to the correct space. We did do an event on the 28th of August, a private event for our wedding anniversary, just to test how things ran, and that was quite an eye-opener actually. Things we didn't think would be a problem, flagged up, and things we thought may, such as noise. Actually, nobody was aware the event took place, but the parking marshal aspect was very significant. At the time of the event, we just placed a notice board at the bottom, guiding people up the footpath, up the access track. That was a definite mistake. The idea now would be to have, as I say, 3 parking marshals with radio controls and high-vis vests, and as people arrive, they're shepherded up the access path and down. And for disabled guests, we have a little golf buggy, electric golf buggy, to shepherd them up and down the path into the event space. So that was the crucial thing we learned, I think, from the exercise, was shepherding people and controlling the people. And as I say, we cautiously say a maximum of 200. We're never going to exceed 200 guests at all.
Okay, thank you.
Right, Mr. Hopkins, I have a number of questions to put here. Page 16 of the first pack, you say, and I'll quote, "The venue is made up of temporary marquee, permanent bar stroke toilet area and self-contained grounds." If the marquee is temporary, where is the permanent bar and toilet situated?
There's like in a wooden stable, basically. So we have some wooden stables, so they're in there. It's a converted wooden stable, if you like.
Right, so guests will have to come out and walk how far from the marquee to the bar, because obviously people are going to be carrying glasses back from the bar into the marquee.
It's in the same space, actually. Yeah, Councillor Shuttleworth. It's 10 metres, all within the same space.
Okay. Now, on Appendix 2, which is in the second bundle on pages 63 and 64, where will staff park and how many staff will be engaged on a night?
That's how many staff? That's a good question. I would suspect that probably 10 to 12 staff. They'll be brought in via the car park, dropped off, and come up via the access track, and then be collected at the end of the event, I suppose. There'll be no parking on site for staff. Our drive will accommodate maybe 20 cars, but the intention is to not let anybody park on our drive.
Right, yeah, that's your intention. But what contractors are likely to be on site?
Oh, sorry, right, okay, yeah.
Well,
yes.
you know, I'm not just talking about staff. I'm talking about anybody involved in the event. You know, you've got your DJ coming first off. You could have a group coming. You know, we don't know what sort of activities will take place at the wedding. So, is that going to limit your parking spaces within your own grounds?
Right, as I say, yeah, nobody's allowed to park. Yeah, but the setting up the event, quite rightly, yes, there would be when the marquee is brought in and the equipment.
No, my focus is actually on the night of any event.
The night of any event,
yeah,
there'll be no parking. Just perhaps the DJ, actually thinking about it, perhaps the DJ, because he's there for the full event and he'll bring equipment. So thinking about this, probably just the DJ, I would say.
Right. So any catering staff, bar staff, bottle and glass collectors, for example, will be required to park elsewhere.
Correct. Absolutely. Yes.
Not within the grounds, and they will be ferried from wherever they park to the venue.
Correct. And then they'll return the next day to clear away.
Okay. Now, in terms of the park and ride facility that you mentioned, you said it's intended to be Delft Cricket Club or the primary school. So if that's your intention, Can I take it that nothing is in place yet in terms of an overspill parking facility?
Nothing. No. The proposal was to approach. Well, Delft Primary School, for argument's sake, is a community car park. It's not Delft School's car park. But the intention was to approach perhaps Delft School to utilise that as a weekend facility and make a donation. The same with perhaps Delft Cricket Club. Probably one or two other areas of parking within Delft, but we've not gone down that path yet until we know we've got a proposal to put forward.
Right. So if we just look at the Delft community car park with emphasis on the community, how are you going to square that with people who are visiting Delft in the summer months who are looking for somewhere to park?
Well, actually, by coincidence, I actually built the car park for Delft Primary School.
No. I mentioned you said it's a community car park.
Yeah, so I built it as part of I'm chair of governors at Delft, and I built it 15 years ago. There's provision for about 50 cars on the car park, and at weekends it's not utilised by the school, which is at its full capacity through weekdays. At weekends, there's probably 5 or 6 cars parked on that car park on a Saturday evening, which is the occasional local resident. So nobody as such really utilises. Obviously, our events are meant to be Friday or Saturday, which kind of works in conjunction with the usage of Delft School car park, perhaps. Right.
Now, in terms of Delft Cricket Club, how would you square the circle with them if they have an event on?
Sorry, I've not even approached them, so I'm sorry for even mentioning that. It was just an example. I would do exactly the same. We would approach them and say, are you willing to, for a contribution, let us utilise the space? If they have an event, we can't do that, obviously.
Right. So at the moment, there is no definite plans in place to transport anybody from Delft to the wedding venue because there's no parking facilities in place.
Well, I can't lay claim to Delft car park at the school there, but that's one provision which I would assume it's a difficult one actually because the council don't own the car park. And Delft School don't own it as such. It falls between 2 schools. So obviously I'd like to seek permission, but who to grant that permission would be, I don't know actually, because it's not owned by the local authority car park.
Right, well, taking into consideration that you've no definitive parking arrangements in place at the moment in Delft, how will you operate the park and ride?
Well, the first intention is to not utilise the park and ride. The first intention is to say within the contract there's limited parking places at the site for 16. Other than that, please taxi in. So it's not the idea is to not utilise any park and ride ideally. And the ideal is just to bring people in via taxi. For argument's sake, we had an event booked for last year where they booked the Saddleworth Hotel. Sorry, they booked the Old Bell and the Shipham. So the guests were staying at the various hotels within Delft. So it was kind of more of a walking situation. But we're very conscious about, the traffic would be. If you look within the wedding contract, it stipulates there's only 16 cars allowed, and we would encourage just taxiing really.
Right, now, Councillor Say made reference earlier to, is it Nothill Lane, where you've been advised not to use. Your marshals on there would have no authority to prevent traffic from using that road. How are you going to make sure that's not breached?
Well, sorry, because I didn't actually, it was just a thought as we were discussing the prospect of traffic going up Nothill Lane. But as I say, people are given the OL3 5DZ, which takes you to the car park. So on the assumption people are using SatNav are following a map, there's no reason to go up Nothill.
Right, now, again, in terms of the ferrying to and from that is mentioned, the park and ride, in terms of Delft, what hours would you see that operating? And also, what sort of security would be in place?
Right. Well, if we utilised a car park in an agreement to utilise a car park, I don't think we'd provide security to that car park. It would be the provision of a park and ride from that space. So, I mean, there's nothing stopping people parking on the road, obviously, but the idea would be to police this in a more disciplined fashion. But ultimately, I would say the proposal would be to encourage those who are coming via vehicle to utilise the taxi service.
Okay. Well, I'll change in the subject. If you look at Appendix 4, which is on page 69 of the second pack, Mr. Dales has just said that you've got planning permission as a wedding venue, but you're asking what type of function on your contract. Is it a wedding venue or is it a general venue for any form of event?
Obviously, the title is the Stables Wedding Farm, so in the main it's focused on our weddings, obviously. We have had various inquiries to just hold birthday parties, but as I say, we're very restricted with just holding maximum 12 events a year, so the idea would just focus on weddings really, and hence the wedding licence was granted to get married on site.
Right. What sort of event wouldn't you permit?
What sort of event wouldn't we permit? We did refuse an event to a lady who wanted to have a 50th birthday party, who wanted fireworks and so on. We just disregarded that one entirely. The judged on merit, I would say, Councillor Shuttleworth, to be honest. So we in the main, we're looking to operate a quality wedding venue business, full stop. I wouldn't say we'd omit any form of event, but in the main, it's just a quality wedding facility venue. Right,
now, again, in your contract, what you're inviting applicants to do is to state the estimated number of guests. Now, you've already said that you'd be limited to a maximum of 200. Yep. Perhaps you'd like to give consideration to making sure that people are aware that is the maximum number of people that could attend.
I think it's actually stipulated in the contract, Councillor Shuttleworth. I think it says there's a maximum of 200. I think.
Yeah, well, I'm just going off page 69, where on item number 5 says estimated number of guests.
Well, obviously, there'll be a wedding party list of people, and that will be policed by the marshal within the car park. So it is very much, we'll perhaps even have a guest list. We're suggesting to have a guest list, and if you're not on the guest list, then you're not allowed into the event space. So that's how we police that. As with the hotel, obviously with the hotel you can just wander about, can't you? But the idea would be it's a marshalled and policed access. So in events, in fact, anybody not on the list would not be allowed to access.
Right. Now you did make reference to the, a 50th birthday request, which I accept you decline because of the fireworks situation. If there wasn't a fireworks and you had a birthday party, a normal everyday party, how would you make sure that there was a limit in terms of the number of people that were in attendance?
Exactly the same, I suppose. Councillor Shuttleworth, we'd have a guest list. From all aspects of it, really, from the person wanting the party to us hosting the party, we'd need to know exactly how many people were intended to be on site. And if we regulate that access, then I suppose that would be the process we'd put in place. Okay.
Now, a question about page 74 within the same pack, again, your contract, number 14, and I'll invite Nicola to correct me if I'm wrong, but it would appear that live music, recording music, dance, etc. is between 1 p.m. and midnight and open to the public 1 p.m. to 12:30. Your contract states the use of the event space will terminate at 12 midnight unless otherwise agreed. On what grounds would you look to extend beyond midnight, which is what the officer has mentioned?
I suppose that would be via the standard application for an extension. I wouldn't perceive that to be the case, but it's in the event there was a request, there would be an application to exceed that outside the licence. If it was refused, it wouldn't be granted, obviously.
Okay, now more of a general question. It relates to some respects what Councillor Gary raised before, and that relates to the glamping pods. In February 2019, you received notification about the device relating to 3 caravans or glamping pods. Have they been used at any stage since that date? And if so, are there any issues?
No, they've not been used with the current lockdown, no, so they've not been utilised.
All right, thank you. Councillor Hussain, your hand's up. I don't know if that's from before,
Yes,
or have you got another question?
Just one question I'd like to ask Mr. Hopkins. Absolutely, Mr. Hopkins, you're in such a lovely village, and anything that brings in or benefits the community in Oldham, we're always pleased to hear and listen. But at the same time, we have to tell the residents' concern and the people of our towns, you know. The thing here is you've got this wedding venue you're going to have on the rent place, and you're parking again 16 spots, and I've got concrete plans for the school car park or the cricket club's car park. Say for instance, you get a booking from Huddersfield, which is not far off from you, or Tameside or Rochdale. How you expect 200 guests to turn up with such a less cars or taxis? When people have their own cars, they're not going to pay, say, 40, 50 pounds from Rochdale or 30 odd from Tameside, and then play tariff 2 after midnight.
Yeah, obviously that'd be very specific, Councillor Hussain. We would very much encourage, without a shadow of a doubt, such as a minibus effect. So 5, 6, 10 people get together and a bus in. Very, very conscious about the traffic. So it would be everything we could do to encourage less vehicles on site. Given we have got this limited space, it's not a question of we just don't regulate this. And obviously it'd be governed by a licence. So anything was granted, if we exceeded that licence, be brought to task, I assume. But I would have very much encouraged, yeah, a taxi service basically.
No,
As I say, we did have a booking this year, obviously, which was cancelled, and they were, albeit the groom was based in Saddleworth, the bride was based in from Essex, but they just booked the Old Bell Hotel, the Shipham, various rooms in the Saddleworth Hotel, so they were brought to the village, if you like, and the idea was to stay in the village over a weekend.
All right, thank you.
All right, Councillor Hussain, any questions before we move on?
No, thanks.
Councillor Gary, anything before we move on? No? All right, thank you, Mr. Hopkins. Right, may I now ask Mrs. Ann Callow to address the panel on behalf of the interested parties?
Hello everyone, I'm Ann Callow. I live at Knott Hill Cottage, which is just further down than Mark's property. First of all, I'd like to say that this application was permitted through permitted development rights and not planning permission. Therefore, I do feel that a lot of residents are totally unaware of this venue even being there. Secondly, I appreciate the old stables is the nearest property regarding the sound that was, the sound test that was being done. And I'm sure the person who lives there has his own reasons as to why he didn't object. Another point I'd like to mention is on the website, you do state that any guests can arrive via the main entrance.
Mrs. Callow, this isn't questions to Mr. Hopkins.
Oh,
this relates to the objections. You're speaking on behalf of residents,
yeah.
So it's not the opportunity to put questions to Mr. Hopkins.
Oh, okay, sorry.
It's to state your case and that on behalf of your fellow objectors.
Okay. Well, what I said first of all still stands then, that the application was made through permitted development rights and not for planning permission. Therefore, I do feel residents have been somewhat disadvantaged in the knowledge of this event area taking place. The venue is set within what is currently a normally quiet country environment and location. And even a relatively low noise level is probably going to be audible and noticeable to some extent. Meeting a noise level limit doesn't automatically mean there will be no impact on nearby residents. The 12 events a year, on the face of it, may not appear many, but most weddings do take place within a 7-month period, and the highest concentration usually between June, July, August and September. Now, obviously, I can't foresee the future, but one would suspect that as this business grows, therefore, he will apply for more events in a year. Now, up to 200 people could attend this venue, and this will generate an increase of noise level and disturbance in some way. There will be an increase in noise levels from vehicles attending, leaving the venue before, during and after. Also, there's noise from people celebrating. After all, it is a wedding. And then obviously the noise from the entertainment. The construction of a marquee will offer little or no sound reduction, as the materials they're manufactured in do little to contain sound. And the sound generated from the people and or the music system will emit out of the structure of the marquee. As one councillor pointed out, the environmental services had stipulated that all external windows and doors should be kept closed when entertainment is being provided. Now, most weddings will have a disco and or live band, or even both. And I do feel that unless the interior structure of a marquee has been soundproof, I fail to see how such measures can have any effect. Most marquees are made of PVC at its best, as are any windows and doors. It literally is just a large tent. Now, obviously, due to the parking restrictions being very, very limited, I do feel that the applicant cannot dictate how people attend this wedding venue, and therefore parking will increase along Joneswood Road, which is already congested. And I do feel this will create a problem for the residents, not only from parking, but from the noise associated with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Councillor Gary?
It's one for Mr. Hopkins, if that's okay.
No, it's to Mrs. Callow.
Oh, no. Right, go on. Carry on.
No. Councillor Sain?
No, sir, no.
No. Mrs. Callow, I have just one question to ask. Mr. Hopkins made reference in the part that he had an event, I think it was August 2019, where approximately 100 people came, including some nearby residents. Were you one of those?
No.
Did you experience any issues?
If this is the open day for the wedding venue?
Yes, I think that's what it is, yeah.
Yes, I did experience problems.
Did you make any complaints to anybody?
No, because we didn't actually know what the heck was going on. We just had vehicles coming up Notting Lane, stopping as I was cleaning my car outside, asking where the wedding venue was. To which I replied, there isn't a wedding venue here, because we had no knowledge of it.
Well, you had no knowledge of the wedding venue or the...
No, we had no knowledge of it, full stop. And people...
Well, of the site you're talking about or the event?
Both.
Right, okay.
And we had people, because the lane is one-way traffic only, because it's only narrow enough for one vehicle, we're pulling into my stable yard to turn around or to pull in to let vehicles pass.
All right, thank you. Right now, we will allow each party to make a closing statement. So either, Nicola.
Thank you, Chair. Again, it's just for members to consider the licensing policy and the statutory guidance in relation to the application and the elements that have been discussed as part of the representations that have been received, and also the objection that was withdrawn from environmental health on the basis of the noise impact assessment being submitted and the conditions being agreed. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola. Mr. Lord?
Sorry, is that for myself, Mr. Dale, sir?
Well, oh, sorry.
I've got my closing. Yes.
Mr. Hopkins or Mr. Dale, sorry.
Yes, thank you. I will finish off on Mr. Hopkins' behalf. Thank you, Chair. I'll keep my closing address short and succinct. We've heard today from Mr. Hopkins on how the wedding venue has been well thought out, and he has had the concerns of the community in which he lives at the forefront of his mind. We have heard issues relating to parking today, but I do feel that Mr. Hopkins has in place provisions for extended parking at the community centre if that is required. I think the contract that he has put together will always identify issues at the time where people are booking, and he will be able to deal with things as the bookings are taking place. The application says a strong application. We've really concentrated on the 4 licensing objectives. I will personally be responsible for the training and implementing the staff training. That covers all aspects with regard not only to alcohol licensing, but also the marshalling, the role of the DPS, and also what Mr. Hopkins is responsible for with regard to noise implications and the monitoring of it. I will refer again to the acoustic solutions report, which gives Mr. Hopkins a range of measures that can be utilised inside the marquee. We get the impression that this marquee is going to be no more than a shell with no noise prevention at all. That will not be the case. Mr. Hopkins did make reference to the fact that he is going to be looking at 3 or 4 solutions within inside the premises to make sure that noise is kept to a minimum. So in relation to the noise pollution and the disruption to local residents, we are only asking for 12 events, licensed events throughout the year. We did attend a pre-hearing meeting in 2020. We did present that to the Environmental Services and to Mrs. Kalo and to Mr. and Mrs. Stott. It was a positive meeting. The consensus was that with conditions, the licensing department and also Environmental Services would not be following on with any representations at all. This was in fact the case when we submitted the NCSL report, which actually resulted in Environmental Services withdrawing any representations and putting together with the police and licensing a wide range of conditions, all of which are agreed by my client. In conclusion, my client fully understands the concerns of local residents, but feels his response to his application shows that there will be no significant issues to be concerned with, particularly with regard to noise pollution and disruption to daily lives. Mr. Hopkins has invested a great deal of time and thought into this application. He is a local resident who cares about his community. The wedding venue, if given the go-ahead, will provide employment for local people. In addition, as you've heard, guest houses, hotels and other licensed venues will have at this time, who have suffered greatly through COVID, benefit from these events taking place. In view of that, I ask that the licence be granted with the additional conditions that we've already agreed to be attached to the licence. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Dales. Now, Mrs. Callow, you have the opportunity to make a closing statement.
I think that the parking situation is totally out of Mr. Hopkins' hands. It's due down to a third party and it's all speculation. Secondly, I've lost my place now. Yeah, just leave it at that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, Katie, would you like to explain the procedure now? Because the panel members will leave the hearing to consider the decision in private, and once returned, the determination of the application and the reason for that determination will be announced and will be confirmed in writing within 5 working days of the hearing. But Katie, because we're on a virtual one, could you outline what action we all now need to take, please?
So me and the panel members plus Alan from legal will leave the meeting. This will stay open, and once the decision has been discussed, we'll rejoin and the decision will be given out.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Can I make another valid point?
No, I'm sorry, we've come to the end.
Okay.
Apologies for that. All right, so if the panel can leave the meeting, and we'll receive another invite, Katie.
You should be able to just rejoin this meeting.
Just rejoin it.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. now read out the decision of the panel, and at the end of it, it will conclude the meeting. There'll be no further discussion. Having regard made to the representation by all parties, in particular that relating to public nuisance, we grant the licence subject to the conditions as outlined on page 10 of the papers, paragraph 7, headed options / alternatives, and as agreed with Greater Manchester Police and the Environmental Health Department. In arriving at our decision, we have also taken into consideration the relevant national guidance and the Council's licensing policy statement. That is the end of our decision. I would just like to thank everybody for their attendance and participation. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.